That was close.
I told you there was nothing to worry about. There ain't no bat.
Oh.
Peyton? Peyton?
Lately, Batman games have been synonymous with quality. With their complex narratives, their fancy schmancy graphics, tight controls, and their Man-Bat. I mean, seriously, did you go to the midnight launch of Arkham Knight? Because I did. It was crazy.
But Batman games haven't always been met with hordes of money-throwing fans. In fact, more often than not, they've been met with pleas of, stop, please stop, and, oh god, why do you keep making these?
Now, there have obviously been some gems over the years, and heck, even some of the recent games outside of the Arkham series have been pretty solid. But today, we ain't talking about Lego games or side-scrollers or fighting games. We're talking 3D action-adventure Batmaning.
I think now is a perfect time to look at gaming's first attempts to do Batman justice in 3D. Get it? Justice.
Now for this mini-marathon, I'll be tackling Batman Vengeance, Rise of Sin Tzu, Dark Tomorrow, and Batman Begins. Why? Because this is my show and you can deal with it. Actually, these are 4 games I played quite a bit when I was a kid. Some of my earliest memories are watching Batman the Animated Series and playing Sonic the Hedgehog. So, naturally, I wanted all of that, but in this. The perfect merging of Batman and gaming. Unfortunately, I was like -1 when Batman Returns came out, so my introduction to Batman in video games was Batman Vengeance, at the ripe old age of 8.
And in the same way that Bruce Wayne was robbed of his parents, I, as a child, was robbed of my ignorance as I was truly and efficiently disappointed in a game for the first time.
So let's start by talking about this game's background. It's red. But seriously, I was immediately drawn to this game because it's based off Season 4 of Batman the Animated Series, or as it's also called, The New Batman Adventures. The game was developed by Ubisoft? Really?
Now this gave me a lot of hope when I cracked open this game again. Ubisoft has made some awesome games, and actually made 2 of my favorite games of all time. Maybe, just maybe, this game isn't as bad as I remember.
Being based off the animated series, the game does the whole cartoony, cel-shaded thing. This works overall and there are some neat visuals, but the in-engine cutscenes are just really terrible. Almost non-existent lip syncing, awkward movement and camera angles. This is a pretty big contrast to the pre-rendered cutscenes, which are a visual treat, especially the way Batman's cape moves. It's all flowy.
Music in this game is a bit of a mixed bag. Unfortunately, we don't have Shirley Walker, but subbing in for her is Sean K. Clement. Now, he comes up with some tracks that I actually like quite a bit, but he also has these moody, atmospheric tracks that are supposed to be ominous and threatening, and a lot of them just end up being kind of forgettable.
And you know what else is forgettable? This story. The game itself has a pretty conventional structure. It's divided into several levels, all within 5 episodes. Now, I like that this is, reminiscent of the show, and I really like the title cards we get for each episode, but what I don't like is this standard by-the-numbers Joker plot.
Let's dive right in, shall we? And, spoilers. Spoilers everywhere.
So one night, Batman's chilling on a building, as Batman tends to do. Now, he hears Joker's laugh somehow, and it's weird. It plays like his bat sense started tingling. Anyways, he goes to Gotham Chemical where he finds one Mary Flynn, bound and gagged and lying next to a bomb. It turns out Joker is holding her son Toby for ransom. Not sure why he wants to blow her up then, but whatever. So fight, chase. Batman ends up on a bridge where he saves Toby, only to find out that Mary was Harley Quinn in disguise. Which, by the way, is obvious from the moment Mary opens her mouth. There's only so much you can do to disguise Arlene Sorkin's voice. I was waiting for the reveal that Batman knew it was her the whole time, but no, he was just genuinely surprised. What a detective. So after Joker's done coming in on a wrecking ball, they duke it out and Joker ends up hanging from the bridge. Batman dives to grab Joker, telling Joker to take his hand. Joker admits defeat and takes Batman's hand, but Joker is wearing his electric joy buzzer, which shocks Batman and Joker plummets to his apparent death. Brilliant. No. Truly original storytelling.
I could stop right here. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Batman's going to go on some adventure. He's going to fight a bunch of his rogues while uncovering some sinister, overarching plot, and then find out near the end that Joker is in fact behind all of it and not dead. You know it. I know it. Let's just get this over with.
So the encounter sets off a whole chain of events that involve Joker using his henchmen to trick Batman and some of Batman's other rogues into basically doing whatever he wants. He tricks Mr. Freeze into going after a pharmaceutical company because, again, real original. Dr. Isaac Evers was working on a drug called Promethium that was meant to help people in cryogenic stasis. It didn't work, so Freeze is feeling a little homicide-y. Next, Harley gives Poison Ivy a chemical that she can use to turn regular people into plant people. Which, hey Batman, don't look so surprised. You've literally fought this exact thing before. Like, literally. So anyways, it turns out that Evers was actually getting paid by the Joker, so he goes to Gotham Gas Works to torch the place and get rid of the evidence.
Batman stops him, but now has to run from the police themselves. Why? Because someone threw a batarang at the commissioner.
I mean, really, Batman is right there, and you have, 5 guys pointing their lights directly at him. Look how much he's not throwing a batarang. But, oh no, Batman threw that batarang, definitely. No, I mean, I guess it could have been Batgirl, but really? This right here is enough to immediately declare war on Batman. Last time I saw this scenario play out, it was because somebody died. And wouldn't Gordon call this off as soon as he woke up? No, okay.
So Batman fights the police and he finds out, say it with me now, Joker's still alive and he's behind it all.
This barely counts as a reveal. I can only assume this plot was written for people who have never seen or read anything Batman, ever. Joker tells Batman that this is all his fault. See, Joker needed the Promethium because it's really flammable, he needed Ivy to rebuild the chemical plant so he could make more Joker toxin, and he needed Batman to open the water pipes so he could dump these chemicals into the water and burn Gotham down while also killing everybody at the same time with laughing gas. This plot is stupid. I mean, what does he mean it's all Batman's fault? This is an interesting philosophical idea regarding Batman's true impact on the psyches of the people of Gotham. But this is 1/3 Batman's fault at the most. He didn't send Freeze that videotape or give Ivy that chemical. All he did was open the water mains, which he only did because Evers was going to burn the place to the ground. Also, Ivy's done this before. How does Harley have a chemical that Ivy doesn't? Also, the police have been turned against Batman before, only to come around in the end. It's been 3 whole seasons. Shouldn't they have given him the benefit of the doubt this time? Nope, 1 batarang and it's time to put the old bat down.
Naturally, Batman stops Joker and the night is saved. Really, the only thing that saves this story is the Batman the Animated Series voice cast reprising all of their roles. Unfortunately, their talent is pretty much wasted here. Okay, maybe this game can be saved. After all, some of the most critically acclaimed games of all time don't exactly have compelling stories. Maybe Batman Vengeance will make up for this with stellar gameplay.
Nope. So what we have here is a standard go through levels, fight bad guys, get to the end, and fight a boss of some kind. Oh, and pro tip, there's no autosave. So when you quit the game, make sure you hit that save game button on the main menu or your progress goes straight out the window. The combat here is very weird. When you get close to an enemy, the camera shifts and it almost becomes like a fighting game. The jump button suddenly becomes a kick button, and you string kicks and punches together to pull off combos. Works in theory, except half the time it feels like Batman isn't even listening to you. The input lag is palpable, and you end up just mashing buttons together until the guy drops. You can do a special attack when this meter fills, but you better be in the exact right position, otherwise you're getting hit. And God help you if the game throws more than one guy at you at the same time, which it will do.
This game also came out during that weird phase where like every 3D game also kind of had to be a platformer. So to go along with your unimpressive combat, here's some unimpressive platforming.
It's really inconsistent. Sometimes Batman grabs onto ledges, sometimes he doesn't, and the controls aren't anywhere near precise enough. So you just fall off the edge and have to repeat the process over and over again. Which is especially frustrating because you're Batman. Why can I grapple here but not here? Not that using your grapple is satisfying in the first place. See, every time you want to use a gadget, you have to awkwardly switch to first-person view and switch between all your gadgets. This does nothing but break the flow of the game, and the gadgets are barely used anyways. You use batarangs and the occasional remote explosive.
So to recap, we have different modes for exploring, fighting, and using gadgets. Now, if Ocarina of Time has told us anything, it's that this can work, but Ocarina of Time lets you lock onto enemies, use your gadgets during combat, something this game just doesn't do.
You know what else this game doesn't do? Make boss fights fun. Almost every boss fight in this game has you staying in first-person mode and throwing batarangs at things until they go down. These fights are insanely boring and really, really easy. I mean, dodging these missiles takes almost no effort, and this is the second to last boss.
If I could describe this game in a word, it would be clunky. And also boring. Nothing in this game feels like it functions the way it should. You never have to mix up your strategy, and stealth is practically an afterthought, only required for one token mission.
Occasionally you get a vehicle section where you drive the Batmobile or the Batplane. These are okay, but is that what it looks like above the red sky? That is just surreal.
This game is like Batman Forever. It has some cool ideas, but it just kind of shoots itself in the foot all the time. It's really only saved by a couple decent performances, and at the end of the day, the difference is that I still enjoy Batman Forever.
Batman Vengeance is clunky both in gameplay and story. Its overall design is dated, and while it's not the worst Batman game out there, it's certainly nowhere near the best. If you're a Batman fanatic, and you love the animated series voice cast, then you might get some enjoyment out of this, but you'll have to get past a lot of frustration.
You know, throughout this entire process, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what the title actually means, Batman Vengeance. I'm not really sure what's being venged or avenged or... I got nothing. So that'll give you guys something to think about while you look forward to my review of Batman Rise of Sin Tzu. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got justice to fight for. Hang on. This part's the trickiest. ThatMattKid out. This thing's hot.
All operatives to your stations. This is not a drill. All operatives to your stations. This is not a drill. All operatives to your stations. This is not a drill. All operatives to your stations.
Okay, I guess I'm just gonna run through all the stoplights. Mission calls. I will be back, my love.
This is not a drill. All operatives to your stations. This is not a drill. All operatives to your stations. This is not a drill.
Mr. Goodplot reporting for duty.
Mr. Goodbot's present and accounted for.
Mr. Goodhop is here, but physically, not mentally.
And I'm the gorilla, and you're not.
So the crew is all here then. Well, it's time to face the inevitable. Put him up on screen. Greetings, my master. The antagonist?
GoodPlot, we are just inches away from receiving the go-ahead to finally invade the Geekvolution channel.
Do you realize they're watching us right now?
They've accepted their fates. But if we keep playing their little game beyond the goal point, we might as well make it more beneficial to your job as my henchman.
Look under your chair.
The Toy Story movies? But they've been dissected by just about every reviewer on the internet, even by Captain Logan under the guidance of a wizard.
But you are going to review exclusively the villainy of the series. There is no discrimination when it comes to studying the art of antagonism. Now, if you excuse me, I have some personal business I must tend to.
Well then.
I think it goes without saying that the Disney Pixar trilogy is about a world where toys are sentient while the humans remain unaware.
So with the perspective being from the toys, the sources of villainy come from places you wouldn't normally expect from our point of view.
The first film had a punk kid, the second had a toy clerk, and the third had daycare toys.
But there's a lot more to it than that. I believe that each film follows a formula I like to call the trifecta of villainy.
First, there's the primary villain, then there's the secondary villain, who is usually there to serve the primary villain, and finally there is the false villain, which is a character that is meant to be perceived as a villain until a twist that reveals otherwise. For the first Toy Story, the primary villain is Sid. The toys care about their owners, who care for them back even if it's not in the same way. So Sid is the embodiment of the lack of care for toys. This undisciplined preteen who would otherwise be regarded as simply a nuisance is depicted here as the personification of death. The secondary villain is Sid's dog. Makes sense, toys wouldn't like to be chewed, so let's get over to the false villains, a group of toys mutilated by Sid. At first they come off as these Frankenstein monsters, but they actually retained their rationality and aligned themselves with our hero toys Buzz and Woody to overthrow Sid. So most of the villainy in this movie is on Sid's shoulders. So if you forget to look at this through the toy's perspective, you'll keep thinking this bratty little kid does not deserve such a prestigious mantle of the bringer of death. But what if he has this mantle not just because of the point of view?
Now this might sound a little twisted.
But if Sid really does take full joy in destroying toys, then what's to stop him from moving to animals, and then later moving to people? So when the toys break the number one rule by revealing their sentience to Sid, thus scaring him straight, the heroes may have accomplished more good than we realized, because they prevented another Jeffrey Dahmer. Now let's move on to Toy Story 2, where the human villain is Al, a sleazy owner of a toy store. Wait a minute, he's portly, he has glasses, wears costumes, collects toys, falls asleep eating Cheetos in front of the TV?
Oh God, I'm slowly becoming Al!
Does that mean that I'm becoming the jackalope from Boundin'?
But you're not a thief.
Oh yeah, I do not go that way of villainy. But Al did. He tried to steal Woody.
Not only that, but the main trait he displayed was his greed for money. People who buy and sell toys as a living is a very common thing now and then. So it's certain that most of them are not this big of jerks. Though a lot of jobs tend to get antagonized all the time. We know that not all corporate CEOs are evil. That doesn't mean we'll stop using them as villains, though. But he could have been enough without the criminal level of desperation, because he's merely our secondary villain. The primary villain was a toy this time. Stinky Pete, the prospector. Even though Al got the ball rolling by wanting to sell Woody to a museum overseas, Pete manipulates Woody into accepting it, using the guise of a kind-hearted mentor. So when he reveals his true colors, not only is he willing to take apart Woody, but he's also a racist. The way he uses the term space toys is as if he's using a racial slur against Buzz. Pete, you are on the wrong side of history. And that leaves us with Toy Story 2's last villain, Buzz's arch nemesis, Emperor Zurg, the coolest of these villains. Well, coolest looking.
Of course, I have his action figure.
That's not Zurg, that's Death's Head.
Close enough.
So after his glorious setup in the first film, along with the setup at the beginning of this film, it turns out he's our false villain. The twist is not that he's good the whole time, it's that he's stupid the whole time. Apparently all toys from the Buzz Lightyear line start out being delusional. But it's okay, a Saturday morning cartoon series was produced as what the Buzz Lightyear line would have been based on. This was where Zurg was utilized as primary villain. Granted, it was just for 2 seasons, but still, I sabered it. So now we've come to Toy Story 3, where the primary villain this time is Lotso Huggins Bear.
And he feels like just a copy of the last one.
Both Stinky Pete and Lotso are heavy-set. Both pretend to be mild-mannered elders before showing their true nature. Both have tragic pasts that made them doubt any loyalty humans would have over toys. And both receive their comeuppance, in which they're taken by a new owner who has an unconventional way of treating their toys. But they do have their differences. Pete was never owned in the first place, so he never had sympathy for toys who refused to let their owners go. Lotso was owned, but was lost and then replaced. That feeling of rejection drove him to demand dominance over all toys at a daycare. Maybe I would have thought that Lotso was more unique if they had gone with the original concept for him. Apparently, in the early stages of this film, Lotso was a malfunctioned Teddy Ruxpin who took out his frustration on other toys by forming a whole gang of toy terrorists.
That would have been the best thing ever.
He still has a gang, which serves as our false villains. They're the toys most useful to Lotso, so he grants them sanctuary in the kindergartner room. As for the toys he deems useless to him, they're imprisoned in the preschooler room to suffer and eventually die. I know it's a bit on the nose, or under it. The gang learns from the new toys the error of their ways. Really? All of them at the same time? Couldn't there have been one or two that still needed some convincing?
Going back to Lotso, you could make a case that the primary and secondary antagonists are switchable in this situation.
Throughout the trilogy, we've seen all kinds of threats that toys would always have to deal with. But the be-all, end-all threat is being discarded as junk and thrown into a landfill. So the villainy of Toy Story goes out with a bang, using an inescapable fire pit to show that no matter what, death is inevitable. Unless you have Squeak Toy aliens. We also get cameos from past villains. Zurg is one of the newest toys of the Redeemed Daycare, and Sid shows up presumably to show us that the lesson he learned stuck, at least in his subconscious, since he became a garbage man instead of a serial killer. But is there not more after the trilogy? I do not recall any of the short films having villainy.
So let's skip to the holiday specials.
Spoiler alert for anyone who cares! Both the Halloween and Christmas specials contain villains, but they mostly feel like reused ideas. Toy Story of Terror had a sleaze who steals and sells toys, which we've already seen. And Toy Story That Time Forgot had a group of fierce toys who were neglected by their owners, which is also something we've already seen.
But those are just harmless cash-ins that are not required viewing.
It's the upcoming fourth movie that I hope stays clear of retreading any old ground and finds something new for this world to offer, since the fourth installment is coming regardless of a logical story conclusion. But we should at least look back at what made the previous villains memorable first. The original film kept things simple. You never needed to know that much about Sid. Sure, there was stuff here and there about his family, but all we needed to know was that he loved breaking toys, and that was that. With the second film, it seemed that we were getting another simplified villain with Al. He loves money, there you go. But then we were in for a pleasant surprise when it turned out the actual primary villain, Pete, had more dimension to him, complete with a backstory and a more intricate motivation. But it seemed that Pixar thought if it worked before, it would work again. So they devoted even more time to the backstory and motivation of the third film's villain, Lotso. It felt like they tried too hard this time, and just gave the film more to juggle than it already had with the theme of saying goodbye to your beloved toys. The villain that saved it for me in that film was the one without a face, because it was more of an idea that the whole story was building towards. So as we forcibly look to the future, the amount of background and motivation for a villain should depend on what story you're telling. Keep in mind you have to balance everything about the villain with everything else you've got in your movie. Oh, and I forgot one more source of villainy. Misunderstandings! Good God, these toys are so quick to turn on each other at the slightest suspicion. Gentlemen, you are losing sight of the real villains when you do that. Calculating villainy score of Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, and Toy Story 3.
I have returned, hopefully to a finished report.
Mr. Goodbot was just in the middle of calculating the total score.
Overall percentage calculated.
Good, but if you really wish to continue being a supervillain, then prepare yourself for what needs to be done once we invade the enemy's land.
I know.
And you also know what will happen if you lose this opportunity.
Is it still execution?
So you remember.
But what about my comrades?
You say that as if they matter.
Are you seriously gonna keep letting him walk all over you? Only I should have that problem, because I'm a small animal, and it's hard not to step on me.
No, wait. I might be secondary antagonist now, but I have a chance. If we get more chapters, he can't be the primary antagonist for all of them. There's room for me. There's a chance for me to elevate.
You know, I don't really think he needs that eye patch.
Stop with your conspiracy theories!